Welcome back. Welcome back to How Should I Introduce You? I'm Silas Grant. Here's another installment of this special show. This concept was a concept that I thought of back during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I wanted to maximize the people in my network. I want to make sure that people that don't know each other in my network get a chance to know each other. People who I think should be in contact should be introduced. And so, typically I sit around and just look at my phone and say, hey, who should meet, the other person, right? And whenever I find what I think is a potential for synergy, I reach out to two folks and say, hey, listen, I've got somebody I think you should meet. And so the two people that are joining me today are people that I really respect. I've watched their work from afar and up close. And you're going to hear a lot more from the both of them today about the work they do, but more importantly, their personal journeys. So I've been joined by David Street and Hakeem Rogers. David and Hakeem, welcome to How Should I Introduce You?
Thank you for
Thanks so much, man, for having us.
Yeah. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a backstory on this concept. For me, when I walk in rooms, people often feel that they are doing me a favor by introducing me in the way in which they want me to be introduced, right? And the three of us have done a lot of work in DC and beyond in the public service space, right? And there are people who will say, hey, here's the next mayor or the next council member or the next this person, next that. And sometimes I just want to be Silas, right? So I've always been a stickler for making sure that I introduce people the way they want to be introduced. And I don't want my introduction of you or anyone else to be offensive to someone. And trust me, I've been in situations where someone has introduced me and it's been somewhat offensive to other people. So rather than me go out on a limb and try to, give my version of how to introduce each of you, I want the two of you to take turns just introducing yourselves and giving a brief spiel about yourself. So David, we'll start with you.
Cool. I appreciate that, Silas. And I just got to say, man, I've been such a huge fan of yours, admirer of yours for nearly a decade. You were doing the ANC stuff. I think that's where our paths initially crossed. And so, man, just know that you are a true inspiration for me, all that you're doing and continuing to do. And I really am, humbled to be here with you and Hakeem for this conversation. A little bit about me. Well, I'm born and raised right here in Washington, D.C. I tell everybody, this is my home, this is my backyard. This is a city that I love, and I'm proud to, be a homeowner, be a contributing resident of the nation's capital, one of the most important cities in the entire world. So that's first and foremost. I share with people that I also identify as Afro-Latino. My father immigrated to America, specifically to DC in the 80s, when that country was in the middle of a civil war. And my mom is fourth generation Washingtonian. So come from two very rich cultures and backgrounds that oftentimes have contributed mightily to society, but are some of the most marginalized and oppressed communities in our country. And so when you talk about service, when you talk about giving, when you talk about purpose, it really is informed by these two communities, giving back, being a neighbor, not being transactional, being purpose driven, all those different types of things. Those themes have really followed me throughout my life. And so that's kind of the bedrock and foundation of who I am. As far as where I am in this season of life, I like how you said it. People put you in a box by the glimpse that they see when you are in a particular space or arena, but they don't know the full scope of you, which is fine. But I appreciate that setup because that's something that certainly happens to me a lot. If I had to define myself now in this season, it would just be someone that is passionate about leadership development for myself personally and for those behind me. I think that's reflected in a lot of different spaces. Been fortunate enough to work and toil in some interesting spaces But it's really all around leadership development. How are we growing leaders? How am I able to work with leaders? And how am I able to connect leaders with other leaders similar to what you're doing, Silas? And so the titles and all, I don't know. Yeah, I have a lot of them, but it all kind of goes back to just being a leader and being the best neighbor and friend that I can possibly be. So I'll shut up because I know me. I'll start rambling and rambling. But yeah, it's just definitely a good space to be in. I'm truly appreciative. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Hakeem, it's on you.
All right, I'll jump in. Thank you, Silas. I really appreciate you for having me on today. And one, I appreciate who you are. When I first met you, I don't know if you remember this, it was actually an introduction through my sister. And I was looking for a mentor at that particular time. And we had the chance to meet at, I think, Big Bear Cafe. We sat down and, I told you some of my ideas, some of my dreams. You were able to provide some guidance in that particular space. So I really appreciate you and all that you've done for me. And I can truly say that I love you, brother, and you're doing an amazing job. As it relates to me, Hakeem Rogers, born and raised in Washington, D.C., in Ward 5. I grew up in the Montana Terrace community. And that will always be home to me. No matter where I go, no matter who I become, it's always ingrained in me. First and foremost, my full-time job, I'm a husband to an amazing wife, Nubia. She's in the education field, and a father as well. I have a 2-year-old, Nasir, who every day I am just watching him grow and watching him become the person who he is set to be. And that has been a journey in itself. It has changed me in the sense that I now view the world through his eyes. And, I find myself going on walks with trash bags around my neighborhood, picking up trash now. So I've definitely changed as a person because of him. I work in the youth space currently. I work for the Office of Youth Programs as the interim associate director, and we have a wide range of programs in the youth space. Prior to that, I worked in the mayor's office doing constituent services, and before I even thought about helping anybody else, my community was first. I started off with my own nonprofit called Absolute Value, and it's a mathematical term. If you put anything in its absolute value, it never is negative. It's always positive, and that's the life that I've chosen to live. And when you invited me on this platform, kind of let me know who I would be meeting. I try so hard not to look online because I'm one of those people. I love to study, love to analyze. So I tried my best, Silas, to do that for you. And I think I did a good job. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation. And David, you are an amazing person just by the little bit that Silas has told me about you. So I'm looking to collaborate as much as possible. So like David, I can ramble on and on, so I'll stop and turn it back over to you, Silas.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I appreciate the both of you for your kind words as well, man. And I love that both of you had the chance to work with the both of you and also do some fun things with the both of you over the last several years too. So I really appreciate you guys for the kind words and also being here. Hakeem, I wanted to start with you because you mentioned growing up in Montana Terrace. And I remember that conversation we had at Big Bear. And when you just mentioned absolute value, it all came back to me because I remember that whole period of time. And one of the things that I always tell people is that if you want to get involved in community work, you should always start where you live. And you did that. So take us back to those, I guess, infancy stages of your community work in Montana Terrace, the lessons you learned, the values you developed, those sort of things as you matriculated early in that community work process.
Yeah, so growing up in Montana Terrace, it's a blessing, right? I was able to, the community that I grew up in suffered a lot historically because of, drugs and a myriad of things, some of which, it wasn't the community members' fault. It was a system that was put in place to of drugs and mass incarceration that really affected the young folks in that particular community. And for me growing up there, my role models have always been my family members. Nathaniel Holmes, who was a prominent basketball player in the 90s, someone that I looked up to. He played for Spingarn. And I remember being in elementary school, and he passed away, unfortunately, due to gun violence. And so what I remember is walking around the school depressed, sad, crying, and the teacher's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I wasn't able to articulate all of those emotions that I was feeling. And so I think, at that moment, at an early age, right, elementary school, I was like, no, this can't be all there is in life. And my grandmother, who is a hero to me, she's from Nash County, North Carolina, sixth grade education. She was a sharecropper, brought her family up here to DC for a better life. And my mom too, who was a 3-time cancer survivor, breast cancer survivor. Those are my heroes. And so they helped me shape who I am today, and always, instilled in me to put community first, put family first. And so when I looked around my community, I saw opportunity there. I saw investments there that could be made. And so as I journeyed through on to college, I was the first in my family to go to college, right? And we're talking about we're in the 2000s, right? 2007, first in your family to go to college. Out of all of these generations, it was new to me, but I felt like my family instilled in me something that was greater than me. They instilled a purpose for my community. So looking around my community, I wanted to make a change. I wanted to do something that was different. And I also wanted to build something that would make me closer to my younger brother, Tavon at the time, who, he was going through his struggles in life. And so working with, I would always say, let's hang out, let's do this. He had different ideas of what fun meant. That's all I'm gonna say. But his friends, I was able to kind of gravitate towards his friends. I said, if I can get you, I can get your friends. And if I get your friends, I got you. So I started the nonprofit Absolute Value, just teaching the young men over in Montana just basic skills, soft skills for work readiness, teaching them how to apply to college. At the time, I was at the University of Maryland, and so I had this Buick LeSabre that had so many tickets from College Park police for parking. But I would take them up to the school just to get them on a college campus to see just a different light. But I always told them that, as your community change, you can change your community. But as your community changes, never go away from your community. Always go back, always be ever present to try and help the next person. My wife, whose family, they own Sankofa Video and Bookstore. And so Sankofa means go back and retrieve. So I have a strong base in trying to go back to my community as much as possible to try and help. And so I think that that's important to me. That's my purpose. And that is some of the things that, I live for. And I wouldn't be who I am without it, the good, the bad, the ugly. And, I'm truly appreciative of my community, and every chance that I get, every position that I'm in, I will try and definitely help members of my community.
Sure. David, you mentioned in the intro the Afro Latino background that you have in terms of your makeup. When I first met you, I was not aware of that, and then I saw on Facebook one of your trips back to your dad's homeland, and I was really intrigued because you shared some video of you walking around in the community, interacting with family members. Um, Talk about your first time visiting your dad's homeland, and if that visit and those subsequent visits since then have helped to really bring you full circle in terms of understanding who you are.
Yeah, that's a powerful, interesting, deep question. I'm still trying to unpack that trip and other experiences along the way, just quite honestly. But yeah, I mean, for context, my dad had not always been involved in my life. We really didn't kind of get much of a relationship until my teenage years. So, there's that. And because of that, it's like a whole side of family, you, culture that you're trying to play a little catch up on. And I feel like I've been playing catch up on, even to this day, trying to connect and understand and really just be a student and learn and listen to the values and lessons that part of me can teach. But going to El Salvador, it was transformational in the sense that, and if you ever travel, have the opportunity to travel abroad, one, it just makes you appreciate home so much more. Like we have a lot of problems here, serious problems for sure. But when you see how other people are living, it's like, oh wow, I don't necessarily know if I could survive if this was my norm. I would have no clue. So it kind of gives you just a better appreciation for some of the amenities, creature comforts that a city like DC, offers, and we can still do better as a city. But again, just keeping it in context. And then when I got home, I mean, it was like, okay, well, I want to dive in. So DC has a rich Afro Latino community here. Shout out to Manny Mendez, the president of the DC Afro Latinos. They're always doing informational sessions and events, really bringing the African diaspora together. So it's not just, do you speak Spanish or do you identify, a particular community? It's, black folks were brought over here just certain boats with certain ways. And, we gotta, bring ourselves together through sharing of ideas, experiences, and really try to knock down barriers that would seemingly try to keep us apart. So one of the things that passion projects of mine is, as much as I'm working in my community, I probably should have stated, I grew up over here in Ward 7, all Texas Avenue, Benton Road. So, Ward 7 is where I claim east of the river. And as much as I have worked with Boys and Girls Clubs, the faith community, etc., I'm trying to be more involved within the Latino community in DC. So that takes me up to, Ward 1, Columbia Heights, Mount Pleasant area sometimes. There are other parts of the city too. Those are probably some of the most prominent. But doing a lot of listening, participating, and just supporting the Latino communities that we have here. I think the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs does an amazing job with connections and activities and stuff. And so I feel like I'm in a great city to continue my journey that coincides with my purpose work, that coincides with, family and friends. And so it's been rich, but I still feel like I'm learning as I go. And so that's kind of where I am.
Sure. Along the lines of family, Hakeem, you mentioned that I met you through Christina. And Christina also has been really active wherever she's lived, and really left a footprint in those places. What was it like coming up behind her, being her younger brother, and essentially following in her footsteps as a public servant? Was it a situation where, it was a catapult, or did you feel like you were ever in her shadow?
That is a great question. I felt that it was always a catapult with her. I never felt the sense that I was necessarily in her shadow, and that credit to her, right? Because she is an amazing woman, self-published author. I remember when she published her first book, and I was helping her buying books at the table. So in looking at her, she's always incorporated me into what she was doing. So I've always felt like I had a stake, and because we, in many ways shared the same vision, shared the same goals. Um, that was helpful as well. And her mentorship throughout life, encouraging me along the way, saying, keep on with this college thing. You promised yourself this, right? Because I turned into a super senior at a point. I was like, I'm helping out at the house. I don't know if I'm gonna graduate. Just her pushing me along the way and introducing me to people like yourself. And I remember at the time when I was on like a law school path. I had just taken like the LSAT. I was working at a law firm in Bethesda as a paralegal. And, I thought law was how I was going to change the world. And she had told me that there was an opportunity for this constituent service job that she thought I should apply. So I applied, went interviewed on my lunch break like 2 weeks later, and winded up getting called back, and I got the job. And that kind of changed my trajectory in life, where I felt that I could make a greater impact elsewhere. So I credit all of that to her. Nothing is done alone. And I really appreciate my sister. She's a phenomenal sister, amazing person, wife, mother of two. And so I really appreciate her, and to give her her flowers on here and every day. It's pretty cool. She may think I'm annoying at times, but I think that's just my job as a younger brother. So
Sure. What's interesting is that I remember that period when you went and you worked in the constituent service space, and there've been a number of people that I've seen take on that job, and they've just like shot out of here, right? You guys are doing some really, really great things. And it's almost to a point where like if I tell people, if you get that job, you can do any job because it's very demanding. You're tethered to the work. Talk a bit about that experience and how you grew from that.
man, that was in itself, it was probably one of the hardest jobs that I've ever had in my life. And just to be in tune with the city, like at all times, being hearing the pulse of the city at all times. It it was an amazing feat to take on. And for anybody who does that particular job, I kudos to them. It is a very, very tough job. And I think that it kind of, it can make you, or it can break you in a sense. And for me, I think that it just strengthened my resolve to get things done, and to be literally at the seat of power for the city, and to see how things operate in the city, to see how the levers are pulled, was just an interesting insight. And I think that, and I always bring it back to community, right? I'm in that position. How can I help my community while being in that position? And I think, I did an okay job. I would say so. But it was a very demanding job. And it was gratifying at times, and I really appreciate the opportunity to serve in that capacity. Being, the constituent service officer for Ward 5, who has 80,000 residents, for the mayor's office. So that was a very eye-opening experience, and it was also an opportunity for me to get my community involved as well, right? To let them know, okay, this is the budget process. This is how things work. This is how you can, you can lobby, and being able to be a voice for my community in rooms that, they may not be in. I think that was my responsibility. And like you said before in the opening, kind of those things that are put on your future mayor, next council member. When you walk around there, you're like, no, 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 I'm just I'm doing this, nothing else right now. That was for me. It was an inspiring, even though I don't have any aspirations to go that way. But it also let me know that I had a duty to represent them, and I really appreciate that.
And I will tell you this, you did a really excellent job. And what I always remember was the conversations you and I had where it was top of mind for you. You would always say, I want to make sure that the residents in the Brentwood community know that I'm not here as some person that's been planted to try to, uproot or do anything that would like hurt people here. Like I want to make sure the messaging and the optics are in line with who I am. I never want to be anything other than the Hakeem they know me to be, right? And that's a person that's continuing to grow. So I always remember that. And I know you put that to the front of the work. So for those that may be watching that remember you from that period, that was something that was on your heart and in your mind at all times. And I always appreciate it and I applaud it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Good. David, one thing that I've always admired about you is your ability to build partnerships with very viable individuals and also groups. And so I just want to talk, or at least listen to you talk a bit about the methods that you've used to be able to build partnerships, long-lasting partnerships, effective partnerships, partnerships that have really been able to move mountains. So talk a bit about your methods with that.
Yeah, that's something that I don't want to say has been like a secret sauce or a claim to fame, because I would say anybody can do it. It just takes intentionality and authenticity. Those are the two main ingredients that create good relationships, partnerships. It's taking a genuine interest in someone else, or if you know this could be a good situation for them or get exposure for them, going up and beyond the call of duty to do it. I think though for myself, I mean, it it's always been like a no-brainer to just have good people around me. Whether that has been like in sports and trying to figure out, all right, well, who are the people that I need to kind of cultivate and learn from, or whether that's been like within the faith community. I feel like I've been able to do that from like I'm trying to gain knowledge and insights. Now, as I've gotten older, I feel like I'm kind of the one that has some access to some different resources and all, but I'm understanding that if I want to punch above my weight class, I still need to kind of have that method, of like analyzing and seeing who's around me and figuring out, all right, well, how can we do this or how can we do that? And so, yeah, it's something that I enjoy. That people always tell you in books or podcasts, follow the stuff that comes easy for you, the things that you enjoy. And that's kind of what I've been doing. So, have partnerships at the national level, some international partnerships. Those aren't as strong, but they're there. And then, locally here within DC, have some good partnerships that are really allowing me again to speak into that leadership piece that I'm really feeling called to like be in, lead in some type of way, shape or form with some of the groups that I belong to. So again, a long way of just saying I enjoy like listening and figuring out how can I be helpful to someone. Wow, this person could be a good asset in this room or to this other person. Can I broker that in some way, shape, or form? Et cetera, et cetera. And then too, like Silas, sometimes these relations, I think people on social media, they see like a recap videos like, wow, this guy has some good partnerships. But a lot of times some of these partnerships, nothing pans from it, that you don't see that part when you've done the coffees and the meetings and you got well, something came up and that was pushed back 3 months or it just didn't pan out. Priorities for an organization or individual change or shifted or COVID, some people who I went con, they just up and left the city. So there's a long game to it too. You got to make a lot of allowances for the unknown when it comes to creating strategic partnerships for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah. What's been the most rewarding partnership?
Uh, Probably the one with United Way, NCA. So during the pandemic, as we all, I mean, it's not very long ago, the big push was how can we get as many people vaccinated as possible, like in a safe way, get them educated, and then just get them vaccinated. And I knew the president of United Way, Rosie, and I never forget, I was actually doing a feature films during that time. I love DC, highlighting Black and brown businesses impacted by COVID-19. I'm getting ready to walk into Turning Natural to do their story. She calls me on the phone and says, I have an opportunity for you to like engage young people in Black and brown communities. I said, yeah, that sounds good. And then a little money came with it, Silas. I was like, oh, well, this is real good. We're going to make this shake. We're going to figure it out. And so a year-long project has turned into 2, 3 years at this point. It has transitioned from, doing COVID outreach to like just health and wellness, and now like evolving even more to wellness on like social media platforms and different things and spaces with our young people. And so that's a partnership that has been rewarding because I think you have two sides that want to continue to help the community and are open to innovations and new ideas and not just doing something that we could continue to do COVID stuff, or we could continue to kind of just do education, but really have a willingness to kind of say, all right, well, let's listen to the community and see what the needs are, and let's bring some innovative people around the table and figure some stuff out. So that has been probably the most rewarding as of recent.
Sure, good stuff, good stuff. Hakeem, one thing you mentioned earlier during your introduction, which I found to be profound, you labeled yourself as a full-time husband. And a lot of men, I won't say most, but a lot of men probably wouldn't say that. There are probably more men that should not just say it, but embrace it and actually deliver on it. It's just a lot more I think that we should be doing as husbands in terms of really claiming that title. Talk about how you got to the point where you embraced being a full-time husband and what comes along with that.
You know, my wife has made it very easy for me to embrace that. So, credit to her. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to be sugarcoated. Uh, and for me growing up, I never really thought about marriage. And when I met Nubia, she was different. You know what I'm saying? You meet somebody and you're like, she's a little bit different. And first we were friends. I think that's very important. We were really good friends. We would talk a lot on the phone, and she traveled a lot. Right? I met her when we was in college. She was studying abroad in France, and so she had a world view that I didn't have, and I was very much interested in that. And I think what she saw in me was I had, she loved that I was family oriented, community oriented. And so as we grew apart, meaning that we grew separate and on our own path, and then we started to grow together. And I think that was very much so, that's what helped me out a lot. And so when I proposed to her, I was very intentional. I took her, my cousin Torrin at the time, he's in the Navy. And so we went out to Hawaii and bought the ring out there, proposed to her. And luckily for me, she said yes. And so I think that being a husband, it takes a lot of listening. And I'm still, learning, right? I'm still learning on this journey. I don't think I know it all. And, we have our ups and our downs, but we always, at the end of the day, communicate with each other as best as we can to move this thing along forward, because it's a lifelong journey. And, we both made vows and commitments, to the universe, to God, and we have been honoring that so far. And I think also because we both work in youth spaces, she's in education, I'm in youth development, workforce development, it's become easier. So we bounce ideas off of each other all the time. For instance, she, through her mom, my mother-in-law, created a partnership with Diving with a Purpose. So it's a Black diving group that goes and they have different programs. They teach young people how to dive, and they excavate slave ships down in Florida off the coast. And so, just she created that partnership for DCPS at Dunbar. So literally there are Dunbar students right now who are in Florida diving. So I see things like that and I say, well, how can we transfer that over that to marine biology or on the workforce side? So, my wheels get to turning. So I think that because we work in the same space, granted different sectors, I think that it's a lot easier for us. And we just relate, we vibe, and love her to death. So
Yeah, that's good to hear. How long you guys been married?
we have been, Silas, don't do this to me right now. July 2nd, 2017, 7/2/17 is when we
Almost
got
6
married.
years.
Yeah, so what, six,
Y'all
6 years. Yeah.
yeah. You got some
In
plans to do. You got like 3 months of planning for the anniversary.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
David, you mentioned a little while ago faith-based initiatives. The other thing that I really admired you for when I first met you was your commitment to ministry. So talk a bit about your ministry and what you've been doing with that.
Yeah. Again, a little context, because my grandparents, for better or for worse, came up in the church. So I've always been associated with like traditions of church and just had to go on my own spiritual journey there for a bit. But I'll say that this has been one of the most challenging and rewarding seasons, I think, for me personally, as well as just all faith spaces, because when you think about religion, this pandemic really set a lot of churches, mosques back. I mean, you talk about communities that were once coming together and they had to pivot, and they weren't set up to pivot. They weren't set up to do it well, at least the majority of them. And so we're, and then you're taking that, and then you're talking, if you're in an urban setting, how do you connect with a gentrified neighborhood or community when you're historically Black and the neighborhood around you is very, very different than it was 20, 25 years ago. So there are a lot of things that are happening now, and I think the thing that excites me is I try to be a student of innovation. So I read a lot of books around that. A couple of them like Blue Water Strategy, anything Linda Hill writes around innovation, like I'm on it, because I think you have to have that type of mindset if you're going to come up with solutions for this time. And because the faith space is one of my spaces, the challenge is trying to get some of the gatekeepers, some of our esteemed elders, if you will, to embrace this change a lot sooner than later if they're going to stay relevant in 21st century DC. And then still keep myself humble enough to know that even though I've been blessed with experiences nationally, internationally, even though schooling, all those things, there's a lot of stuff that I just don't know. And so for myself personally, it's walking a balance. And then with my expectations with, my own church and the faith community at large, because, part of my, my job, at least, with Bread for the World, is literally going around the country working with faith leaders around some of these very topics. How do we stay relevant? How do we have impact? How do we organize? And then, faith spaces are different. You go down south in the Midwest, their political views don't even align with the
Yeah,
views of the ones that are like here in DC. So it's really being able to speak different languages and all when you go in some of these spaces. But the common thread is, we all want to help people. We all want to do it with the spirit of love, and we all want to be around, quite honestly, just from a business standpoint, for the next 15 to 20 years. And so, like, what do we need to do? What are some illustrations that we can follow from others that are doing it well, and all that good stuff. And so, it stretched me, and I appreciate looking at some of your stuff, Silas. Like, as I watch you do more and more of like the business side of business strategy and helping business owners think through how they can be competitive. I respect that because I feel like in some ways I'm doing that just through a faith lens. And so, yeah, I have a huge appreciation for those individuals who are stepping into that space and trying to help others see things a little bit differently because, it is important, especially if you want to have sustainability and impact, short term and long term.
yeah. I think specifically about DC and how powerful the faith-based community was in generations past, right? And then I'm starting to see that there's a different focus now, not so much on like political sort of like power and flexing of muscle, but really I think along the lines of like specific issues,
Mhm.
and also making sure that people that are in need are supported. So folks like yourself, folks like Jason Jones, Delonte Golston, I'm seeing this, fresh crop of people come up. So I do have a sense of optimism around it. But I guess my follow-up question to that would be, what do you think the faith-based community can do to begin to cultivate more Davids, more Jasons, more Delontes?
Well, it kind of goes back to building and understanding the relations or potential relationships around you. And so I was just having a conversation with a church here in DC, that membership is declining, but as you can appreciate to your point, Silas, that 15, 20 years ago, more active, more robust organizations. And so they have resources, but they don't have people power. And they want to build relationships. They want to see strollers coming down the aisle. They want to see younger people at the events. And so I was sharing with them, well, how you engage the community. One, we got to talk to them, but just some ideas off the top of my head is DC has a lot of entrepreneurs. We have a lot of small businesses. Why not take some of those resources and come up with your own innovation lab? Come up with your own resource for some of these individuals who are in your communities who are probably my age, a little older, a little younger, depending on where you are in the spectrum, and invest that way, as opposed to some of the more traditional types of investments that this community, just doesn't need. It doesn't make sense to invest heavily in some of the direct service communities when all the houses around you are $1 million or more. Like they might not need some of those services, but what they probably do need is, people helping with taxes for a small business, or if everybody here has a side hustle. How do you effectively get that off the ground? So, what type of speakers should we be bringing into the community, and all that different type of stuff? And you got to help them see it, and then you got to help them put a plan together. If you do these steps, you may be able to see an increase online. You might be able to see an increase in person, but it's going to take a focus and just a change in what you've been currently investing in. That sometimes is uncomfortable, but again, we're in times where we have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So that's
So,
how I think you get a new crop of people who will appreciate face spaces and partner with them and all that good stuff.
sure. Speaking of new crop, Hakeem, you are responsible for making the connection for a lot of young people getting their first opportunities at getting into the workforce. Talk a bit about that work and then your vision for what you want the future to be for our young people.
Oh yeah. So the future of work is changing, and I think that as the future of work changes, we need to adjust as well. So just a little backstory. Uh, I run one of the largest summer jobs program per capita in the nation, the Marionberry Summer Youth Employment Program, in addition to other programs housed under the Office of Youth Programs as well. And right now we are in the process. So shameless plug, June 1st is the last day for host sites to sign up to become a host employer for the Marionberry Summer Youth Employment Program. Program has been around for 44 years, an amazing program, and it has provided scholarships, credit to the mayor for investments in scholarships, scholarship funds to the tune of like $1.2 million over the last few years. But building partnerships is key. We have to place about 14,000 young folks between the ages of 14 to 24 across the city for 6 weeks of summer employment. Um, when COVID happened, we shifted totally to a virtual program. Luckily, we had the infrastructure in place. We had invested in this technology through a career team, which provided virtual workforce services. We were initially using it for our orientation and using it as a feature for host sites who wanted to sign up but maybe did not have a full 6 weeks of coursework or 6 weeks of employment that they could do. They can supplement it. But when COVID happened, we shifted to a virtual program, and host sites were able to communicate with young folks virtually. Um, as we shift back to like 90%, almost 100% in person, it is, we see the need in young folks. They are coming out in droves to all of our events. We had our career expo, which is one way we allow our young folks and host employers to interact at the early stages to see, if that job is for them. So we had like Washington Gas, we had DC Water, a whole bunch of community-based organizations. So for my team, I've told them to get innovative in how they reach out to employers. We have a youth and parent focus group that we have every year at the end of the summer. And part of that is to provide us with feedback and to give us a grade on how we're doing and what the future looks like, right? To be a little bit more forward thinking. And as we become more forward thinking into what particular jobs that they want, because entrepreneurship, from what we are initially hearing, is very, very much so what young folks are wanting. They're wanting to start their own jobs, or own businesses rather. And so they have a very entrepreneurial spirit. And our position is to, cultivate that. And how can we do it? And so, in thinking forward, how can we do it locally? How can we do it nationally? And how can we do it globally? Because this is a global world right now, right? And I know we had a conversation before. What if we had, for instance, someone who was interested in fashion and design? The next, let's say, Malik, right? And from E, and they were interested in that at the age of 14. When they started our program from 14 to 24, how can we cultivate that, right? Um, would it be possible to maybe send them over to Italy for a week or so to study fashion in Italy? Possible. Um, and exposing them to that particular industry at an early age in different ways, providing them resources to get their business license, providing them working with a community-based organization to help them develop a business plan so that they know what they're doing. To David's point, maybe even working with a church who has a tax person there. They can understand taxes, right? And using all of these different partnerships to help cultivate that dream so that they can be ahead of the game. When in 2011, I went to South Korea. My wife, she was teaching English in South Korea at the time. And when I went over there, I was just so amazed at how far ahead those young folks were. And I was just like, wow, we have a lot to do here. And it's just not unique to DC, the whole nation, right? We have a lot of work to do uh, to make that possible, to help them catch up. So building partnerships is key, which is why I'm very excited that you have introduced me to David, because he is already in that space. And I'm very much so looking forward to utilizing and leveraging his network so we can provide those opportunities for young folks in this particular space to help them be prepared for the future. Artificial intelligence is big right now too in the IT space, right? We need to be making investments in that space. So I was very, um, excited when I was able to connect with a few folks at a mixer event that we all happen to be at. So I think preparing young folks for the future is key. Exposing them to a different way of thinking is also key, and also providing them the resources necessary and asking them what they want, right? Not necessarily pushing something on them, asking them what they want so they can still have that passion to continue, and also expose them to different things because they may not know. I started off, I wanted to be a lawyer, and now I'm in the workforce development space and it's my passion. So I think that's definitely a key.
Sure, sure, sure. So as we yeah, definitely clap it up for that. That's definitely a great vision. And I for me, I've said this to you offline. I want to be helpful in making sure that you achieve that because I think for us as a city, we have to begin to have a mindset where, we can be a factory for high performing people and getting them to that point where we can really make that, a real thing and it can come to fruition. I want to be a part of that. So I definitely applaud you for having that vision.
Sure. Let's
Yep.
do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So as we land this conversation a bit, there's a quote that's been on my mind all week, and I just want to share it with the both of you. And I just want to open it up if you guys have any thoughts about it because it really hit me. I was reading a book some months ago called "What Makes the Great Great" by Dr. Dennis Kimbro, and I took some notes on it. And I just went back to the notes this week, and I saw this quote that didn't even really hit me the first time the way that it did the most recent time that I read it. And it said, character is a poor man's capital. And that just really stood out to me. And I think I know why, but I just wanted to share it with some people. And I've been sharing it throughout the week. But with the two of you, when you hear that quote, character is a poor man's capital, what do you think?
I'll jump in. That's an interesting quote. Character is a poor man's capital. It reminds me of this card that I got from my grandmother, sixth grade graduating from Langdon Elementary. Go Warriors! And she gave it to me, and it said, "Try not to become a man of success, um, but a man of value. Have strong values." I think that who you are, what you value, and how you invest in yourself um, is essentially your capital. If folks don't know what's in your bank account, they only know you and how you present yourself um, and what you stand for. And that is, okay with you in the inside, and it helps other people. Then you are rich beyond any imagination. So that's kind of what I think that quote is getting at. Um, if you have a rich character, you can be poor, you can be rich, but if you have a rich character, that's all you really need. If your values are solid um, and you're a good person at the end of the day, that's all that really matters.
Sure. How about you, David?
Yeah. Similarly, I would certainly echo Hakeem's thoughts and words. It reminds me of my grandfather would tell me, when you dress up, it's not how much the suit costs, but how much the value of the person in the suit. And that was speaking to your mindset and all those different types of things. And I think now more than ever, we can all be reminded of that, especially living in a place like DC, where for better or for worse, like you can look on your LinkedIn, your IG, and just feel like you're behind professionally, status wise, whatever the case is. But if you have your character, your morals, those things can be your own pace and your comfort, because you can get caught up on the in DC is we got the national stuff, we have robust stuff going on locally, so it's easy to get caught up. But yeah, your character, your values, your who you are on the inside can really be a good center and pace, because it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's something that, at least on a daily basis, I know for myself, I'm not too proud to say that I have to check myself on. It's a daily thing. What is my character going to be like today? Sometimes it's been questionable and sometimes it's been amazing, but I know it's a day by day choice of the character you build and the character that you project. So I appreciate that. And I certainly have to jot that one down and send it out. Hey, Hakeem, what you'll know about me is I'm not scared to steal some stuff, man. I'll be like, yeah, what you think about this?
Yeah.
Silas know that I already used the marbles in the sand from
Nah, that's what we're here for, shit.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to share
it. Listen, guys, I appreciate you guys for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with you and to also make the introduction between the two of you. And for those that watch these installments, I hope you guys are continuing to gain some enlightenment from these conversations. And you guys have alluded to it, but one of my goals in these introductions is also, see if there's a real synergy to do work together. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from this introduction. And for those that are watching, continue to watch, like, and subscribe. And Hakeem and David, once again, thank you guys for being a part of this.
Thank you.
You, Silas. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.